Hello everybody and welcome back to another bonus edition of KerVAM. This is a podcast I was not planning to record 5 days ago, as I'm pretty sure for the second time we've been struck by the unlucky situation of posting a podcast the day they announce a new Blu-ray box set. It happened with, I'm pretty sure, season 17 as well, where we were like, this has been leaked and rumoured to be the new box set, and then they announce it the day I post the podcast. So sorry for out-of-date news, which I feel like is what we're doing a lot on the podcast at the moment. But of course, last week, season 22 was announced as the next box set for the Doctor Who collection range, the classic series Blu-rays. And so it's obviously an opportunity for us to get stuck into season 22, discuss the season a little bit, but also all the new special features we're expecting to get on the box set. We don't currently know exactly when it's going to be released. We know it's sometime probably going to be in March. I know the leaked date, I think, was the 14th of March, but the sort of press release hasn't confirmed the actual date. So we'll just have to wait and see. I'm not quite sure, but we'll see how it goes. And while I'm joined by our full complement of guests, I've got Bill, Ryan and Charlie. How are you guys all doing? Brilliant. So, Bill, you get first word as you missed the last podcast. Season 22. Where does it stand for you? Is it one you enjoy? It's not usually the highest rated season, but sort of what are your brief thoughts on season 22?
I feel like it's a season that is. I think it's a perfect example of a season where it's not great, but it's not terrible. I think ultimately, there is a lot of stuff I like in it, a lot of stories that I do like from it. I think Attack of the Cybermen, for example, is pretty good. Somewhat underrated, I think, actually, yeah. And the background.
Indeed.
And Vengeance on Varos, another really great story there. And Revelation of the Daleks is pretty good as well.
Yeah.
But then you've got ones like Timelash, which is definitely the weakest of the season.
Yeah.
And I think one of the weaker Doctor Who stories ever, I would say, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's stuff like The Two Doctors and Mark of the Rani. You know, they're both okay, they're fine, but I feel like they're just better stuff out there. I think I would slightly take Mark of the Rani over Time and the Rani, ever so slightly.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it just appeals to me a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But for the Two Doctors, I just feel like there's better multi-Doctor and Centaurons stories out there.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
But it's fine as a season. It's not a bad choice to go for. I just think it's a bit surprising that they didn't go for something more like, season 21, for example, which, is a better season in my opinion, and might have been more of a, you would think anyway, it would be kind of the season that they would want to go for next, or maybe even season 25 instead or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still very glad that they are going to release it. I did notice, I mean, I could be wrong here, but I don't think there's as much original special features for season 22 as there was for season 17, for example. I think there was a lot of stuff from the archives and kind of your usual typical stuff that you get on the collection range, like the Behind the Sofa, In Conversation, stuff like that, which is great stuff, don't get me wrong, but it's a shame that they kind of weren't able to get more original stuff out there. But I suppose with them having already done season 23, maybe they felt like they couldn't include as much stuff because it's from the same era, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a reasonable amount of new content. We'll come to it in a minute. I think it's there's certainly a few interesting features that are new on it, even if maybe there's not a huge amount of it. And as we say, there's stuff like the Colin Baker Years VHS thing being put on there, a fix with Centaurons, which is a very interesting decision, and we'll come on to that. But Charlie, I assume you watched the trailer for the new season 22 box set, which saw us bring back Nicola Bryant playing Perry as a character again on screen, which I think is one of the really fun things about these trailers, is that you can see these companions back in character for another little moment. Also having the guy who was in KerVAM, slightly randomly, I couldn't quite picture him until I googled it, and I was like, oh yeah, he was that guy in KerVAM. Did you enjoy the trailer for this box set?
Yeah, I feel these trailers, they're like, considering they're trailers for a Blu-ray box set of a season that was like over 30 years ago, they're really well like directed and produced. Like it's really impressive. It's nice to have like these tiny, they're not even mini-sodes, they're just like little bits of like the companions. Like we had a 24 Karat with Mel, we had the Home Assistants of Death with Louise Jameson, and now we've got this thing with Perry. We even had the statue of Brian Blessed, you know, these little
I like that.
And we got that. My one gripe with it is the TARDIS was rendered really badly in the trailer. It didn't look great. It's like they couldn't get a prop for it, so they just decided to CGI it, and it wasn't the best, but I'm willing to let it go because it's really well done considering what it is. You know, they could have just done the lazy route, but they didn't, and I like that. And it's as for the special features, I feel there aren't as many as there were in previous sets like 8 and 14, but they're still probably around the same amount as 17, maybe a bit less, I don't know. But yeah, like you say, there are some interesting special features. The Michael Grade one should be really interesting.
Yes, indeed.
And fixed with Centaurons, I'm very, very surprised about, but who knows, they might, edit out bits like they have in the more recent issues. I don't know. But yeah, the trailer was, really well made.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I thoroughly enjoyed the trailer. As you say, I think the TARDIS almost rivaled the JPEG of a TARDIS they used in the Jodie Whittaker reveal clip back in 2017. That wasn't the best moment for them there, but fair enough. But Ryan, having a little peruse of what we have got to view that's new, is there anything that jumps out to you in terms of the special features that you're most looking forward to giving a watch?
The one that's definitely springing to mind is the 3 Matthew Sweet interviews. I mean, it'd be very interesting to hear obviously what Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant have to say about the series, about the sort of the trials and tribulations they went through, because this period was obviously the most troubled period in classic Doctor Who history. I think Colin Baker's run was pretty much mishandled from the word go. So it'd be interesting to see their side of it, what their perception of it is. And then, of course, you got the crowning jewel out of all of this, which is Michael Grade popping up, which it's going to be very interesting to hear what he's going to have to say, because some of his words in the past have been very scathing, to put it lightly. I mean, who can forget that appearance on Room 101 where he famously slated it? So it'd be interesting. I think it's going to be very interesting to hear what he thinks about the show now. If it's maybe improved, but I doubt it, or just basically why he just was so against it from the beginning, and why he felt the need to cancel it. So I think that's going to be the most interesting one out of all of them, is definitely those 3 interviews, and that, especially that one with Grade in particular.
Yeah, I feel Michael Grade, although obviously we as Whovians don't like him because he was probably the reason that led to the butterfly effect of it being cancelled. I don't know, I quite like how he's taken he's accepted his place within fandom, and he's just kind of playing along at this point, like from the villain's point of view, and he has like a villain, laugh. Like, I quite like that. It's good.
Yeah, I'm certainly looking forward to seeing what he has to say, and I think that Matthew Sweet it will kind of really sort of probe him and really try and understand more about his perspective on Doctor Who and why he disliked it so much, and kind of, rather than just him sitting there going it was awful, I got it cancelled, like actually delving a bit more deeply into that, I think is something that hopefully this interview will really bring out. And as you said, Ryan, the same for the Colin and Nicola ones, which I think will give us a little bit more insight into the mess that was behind the scenes around the mid-1980s, because it was pretty disastrous, and obviously went in hiatus after this after this season as well for 18 months. But yeah, looking at some of the other new features alongside those 3 in Conversations, which also tells us that in future they can do as many as they like. So we always thought to this point you can only have 1 on each box set, but now we've got 3. So it doesn't matter if we think they've missed somebody, they'll just chuck 2 or 3 on another box set. So I thought that was quite promising. Then alongside that, they've got a new making of documentary for the 2 Doctors. I can't remember if it actually had one originally. I know the 2 Doctors was released like in 2004 or something like that. So it'd certainly be a really old one if there is one, but I know they've done a new one, which I think might involve going to Spain, but certainly there's also a location type thing with Colin and Nicola, where they are going to the various locations of season 22. Obviously, wherever Mark and the Rani was set, I can't quite remember. The stuff in Spain, I think, and also from Revelation of the Daleks, among others, I imagine. So I don't know, Bill. I mean, we've had these sort of location features before, like on season 8, where you had the direct route, where we saw the directors visiting different filming locations. Do you quite like the idea? Do you like the idea of sort of seeing the cast kind of going back to these old locations 40 years after they were there, and kind of seeing the changes, being sort of reminiscing on it? Is that quite a feature you'd look forward to?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I haven't really kind of been able to watch D1s on the other sets as of yet, but yeah, that is something I've always been interested in, because I think it's really fascinating to have the cast go back to those locations and to be swapping stories about what it was like to film there and the memories that they have from when they were filming and everything. I think that's really good, and yeah, it is like I know especially, yes, they did it with the DVDs, but I think it's especially become a very permanent part of the collection range, and I think that's good. I think the behind the sofa stuff as well is I've not had a chance to properly watch some of those yet, but I've always heard very good things about that, and then in Conversation as well, not completely had a chance, but again, I've always heard really good things about them. So I do always love just hearing behind the scenes information about these things. Yeah, absolutely. I think that visiting those locations, especially if you incorporate them in documentaries and stuff, it just adds that much more to a making of and makes it more interesting than just, as we always say, having a Talking House documentary, which isn't a bad thing. Just if you can, get a drone out flying over whatever filming location they used, even if it's just a quarry, like that just adds something to sort of the experience of that documentary. So I'm sort of hopeful for those features. Then obviously, as you've said, we've got the usual behind the sofa features, which this time have got Colin Baker, Nicola Bryant, Terry Malloy, who played Davros, didn't he? Peter Davison, Janet Fielding, Sarah Sutton, Sylvester McCoy, and Wendy Padbury. So it's quite an eclectic mix. I mean, Ryan, we've obviously got the Doctors from either side of the Colin Baker era with, Peter and Sylvester, plus slightly randomly Wendy Padbury. And the classic Janet Fielding, Sarah Sutton, well, we commented on season 17 not having it, but well, they've gone straight back to it. Do you think it's some good combinations for another set behind the sofas?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting choice. I mean, it's great to have Terry Malloy there because he appeared in not one but 2 of these stories. He was at the beginning, at the end of the season. He was in part 1 of Attack of the Cybermen, and he was also in. Well, of course, he was Davros in Revelation. Yeah. So it would get very interested to hear what he thinks of the stories now, getting more of his perspective, and twice since there's that, and also the new audio commentaries that he'll be taking part in Revelation, which I'm really excited about, because I think Revelation is easily the best Colin Baker story and easily the best one of that season. And as for the others, I mean, Peter Davison, Janet and Sarah, well, they were there on season 24, and so it makes sense that they're being another season, series 80 seasons, so they had to have them there. The Sylvester McCoy and Wendy Padbury is very, because it's so unexpected a bit, because it's an 80s doctor but a 60s companion. It's a bit weird, but I think it'd be interesting to see like 2 different perspectives from it, maybe 2 different contrasting views. Maybe Sylvester could end up liking it, maybe Wendy couldn't, or vice versa. I think it seems to be a very interesting lineup this time around, so it does have me interested to see what they all have to say about this season, especially considering how very violent and kind of troubled a lot of these stories are.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think there's going to be some interesting responses from those, and I'm certainly looking forward to another set of those on the new box set. Then alongside that, we've got a couple of extended episodes from Vengeance on Varos, The Two Doctors, and Revelation of the Daleks. So presumably there's just some leftover, cut footage, location footage that wasn't included, that kind of thing that they're going to drop back in, which is always nice to have. I always appreciate it, even if I don't watch it that often. It's kind of nice to know it's there with that kind of thing, I find. Then we have the slightly questionable and debatable Fix with Centaurons, which is, of course, the sort of 7-minute or so, I think it is, a little sort of mini episode, which, of course, features Jimmy Savile in it, which is, was a reason originally for them to remove it from the DVD release. They released it, sort of the very earliest DVDs, which were released in the mid-2000s, did include it, but the later reprint of the DVD, I think in the late 2000s, it wasn't there, and you couldn't get it on the disc anymore. So I'm quite surprised, really, that they've decided to bring it back. And also intriguingly that they've got an audio commentary on it as well with Janet Fielding, Colin Baker, and Gareth Jenkins, who I think was the child in the little short. So yeah, Charlie, I know you mentioned we have to assume they're going to edit it or something, or maybe there'll just be a big disclaimer at the beginning of it or something. I mean, I kind of just assumed they wouldn't include it. I thought it's just not worth the risk. It's on YouTube if somebody wants to see it. Like, I am quite surprised they put it on there. How do you think they're going to approach it?
Yeah, what you said about either putting a disclaimer or editing, they're definitely the two options. I can't see them just pretending like nothing happened, Yeah. I feel they will put something like, Jimmy Savile something, because obviously they've got to acknowledge it, or just completely edit him out, which probably is possible, really. That said, I don't really think I'm going to watch it anyway, or I might just for the commentary or something, because it's I'm not going to say it's a very good story regardless of whether he's in it or not. Really, it's pretty bad, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, funnily enough, I think when they did the season 12 box set and they did the there was a documentary about the Centaurons. It's edited. It was from the original DVD release. It was edited slightly, I remember, for the season 12 Blu-ray set, because they did have a section where they go through each Centauron story. They did mention the Fix with Centaurons, and they edited out the Jimmy Savile bit and Colin Baker's remark about him, saying he's more scarier than the Centaurons, and I'll just leave it at that. So they edited all of that out of the season 12 box set. So I'm wondering if they could do a similar situation here where they could just edit him out. I don't know. I mean, there's many different ways that they could go about it, I guess.
Yeah, it's been so long since I've watched it that I can't fully remember like how much of a role Jimmy Savile has in it, as to whether it, it's going to be that much of a problem to remove him. I don't know. Have anybody seen it recently?
So I watched this on YouTube just the other day when it was announced, because I thought, if they are going to edit this, how hard is it going to be? And he does just have a little bit at the end, and he sort of has a bit at the start as well. It's a pretty tiny episode anyway, especially edited, it's like 2-3 minminutes long. I think it's not really much. But yeah, either way, I don't think it's really the best episode ever anyway.
No.
I think I remember at the very end of it, they were like, what's that? It's horrible, it's hideous, and there's on the title screen, and then Jimmy Savile's face pops up on the screen. I think they could remove that. They could replace it with something else, who knows? Or maybe, as they said, they'll just put a disclaimer on it. So, I mean, it'd be very interesting to see how they tackle that, and the audio commentary especially.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm certainly interested to see the approach they take on it. In many ways, we're quite lucky with Doctor Who that there isn't too many sort of episodes or clips or whatever that feature people who have since had things come to light about them that would make it difficult to release. I mean, okay, if we get to series 1, that might, on the collection, that might become problematic because of what's happened since 2005. But in terms of classic Who, there's not a lot of that there. So I think we're quite lucky that we generally don't have to deal with this sort of situation. And I'm sure that the team at BBC Studios who work on this would have taken a lot of time to consider how to approach it. And I'm sure they won't have just dumped it on there without any context. That at least explain the situation if nothing else. But yeah, that'll be certainly something to look out for when we get the box set in a couple of months, hopefully. And then the few various other bits and bobs that are on that's kind of all, well, I mean, that's not a new thing, but that's kind of all the new sort of documentaries on this. As you said, Bill, there's kind of not a huge amount of actual new documentaries themselves on the box set, but there's still quite a lot of sort of stuff, I guess we'd say. So we come to, the classic things, updated special effects. So Timelash, is that going to make anybody more inclined to watch Timelash? I mean, Bill, are you more excited for Timelash because there's new special effects?
I'm not too sure about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'll give it a go, but I can't promise you anything now.
Yeah, it's
nothing could ever improve that story. Nothing could improve Timelash. Funnily enough, you know how with series 2 with Love and Monsters and Off Guard and Doctor, it's like this with this season with the 2 Doctors and Timelash. Watching them back to back is really tough going. I mean, I know when my dad watched it, he struggled to get through those stories. I mean, he says the 2 Doctors was the worst story he's ever watched of Doctor Who, and Timelash is a very close second, and it isn't hard to see why. I just don't see how any new effects could improve those stories, Timelash especially.
Yeah, I mean, certainly with the 2 Doctors, it just goes on forever. I think it doesn't help. It's the only one of them that's a 3 45-minute episodes rather than just the 2. So it's basically a 6-parter. And it just feels like it drags on forever is my, recollections of the 2 Doctors. And then Timelash is just so grey and bland is probably the way I'd describe it. Everything about it is just beige and grey and miserable. And
lots of the season I can kind of get a kick out of because lots of it, while it may be quite bad, it's not boring.
Yeah.
Which I feel is something. It's like enjoyment out of it. But even Timelash, there's nothing there. It's
it's not a particularly memorable one, it has to be said. I mean, if we look to the final few different things, we've got new 5.1 soundtracks on Attack of the Cybermen, Vengeance on Varos, and Revelation of the Daleks. So that's something I always enjoy, particularly when I watch them in headphones. It's always a bit of fun. Obviously, they include in that little trailer clip that they call the Eternal Mystery. It's quite sort of, I don't know, mysterious, I guess, isn't it? And a good old bit of studio footage from Vengeance on Varos, 2 Doctors, Timelash, and Revelation of the Daleks. Is anybody planning to sit through another 6 hours of studio footage anytime soon?
I don't know if I'll be able to have the time. I've got other things to do, like watching special features and the documentaries.
Yeah.
Maybe it might be good background noise. I don't know.
For me, I tend to have it on while I'm doing something else. It's probably the way. When it's that long, and as much as it's cool to have it, and it is interesting to see like the production process of the sort of that era of Doctor Who. Also, half an hour in, it's all the same stuff just happening over and over again, because actually being on a film TV set is pretty long and boring in places, and that rather shows in the studio footage. So yeah, it's nice to have it there. And of course, isn't this the season with the infamous acid bath going all over the place or something, like the glass breaking on it or something? Isn't that I feel, was that in Vengeance of Varos? Is that when it happened?
I know there's something in Battlefield.
Was it Battlefield? I can't remember which one it was.
I think the tank that Ace is in Battlefield. I think that might be what you're on about. But if something happened with that acid bath, it wouldn't surprise me.
I can't remember, to be honest. I thought originally about it, but I may be conflating the 2 different memories. It may well be what it is. But yeah, so we've got that. We've got, the old convention footage like usual. We've also got the Colin Baker Years VHS release thing, which I think's, quite cool. I don't think I've ever watched it, but I can't. Do we know what it's sort of like? Because obviously there's the Tom Baker Years VHS thing, which is him sat in front of a TV reacting to random clips for 3 hours. But then you've got like the John Pertwee one is just him introing various episodes. Like, do we know what the Colin Baker one is like at all? I don't know if I don't think any of us have ever seen it, have we? Well, I'll have to go and dig it up before we cover it and have a little look.
I know they did the Dalek years for the Power of the Dalek Special Edition.
Yeah.
And I think they might do one for the Cybermen, because I know they did the Cybermen years. I think if they ever do a Wheel in Space animation, which
that'd be the obvious place.
They might be able to put it there. So
yeah,
I think that the Colin Baker years might be the last one of that. I don't know if there was a Sylvester McCoy one. I don't think they did a Peter Davison one, but they might have done Sylvester, or maybe they did. I'm pretty sure someone will let us know.
Yeah, I don't know. I lose track of all these different ones that they made. You know, it was all JNT's idea, wasn't it? Just to try and milk Doctor Who in the time it wasn't on air, basically, by let's do VHS releases and get the cast involved and stuff. And, you know, it's fun stuff, and I'm looking forward to seeing what there is of it on this box set. I think that'll be quite fun. But that, I think, pretty much covers us with all the new stuff for this. Obviously, there's going to be the same old, you know, released documentaries and features and archive stuff and interviews from the time and all that kind of thing that we usually had on the DVDs and usually get with the Blu-ray. So it'll be nice to cover all that off. And I don't know, like it's, you know, it's going to be weird to have, this will be the first Doctor that's got almost all of their stories covered in the collection range. Obviously, the Twin Dilemma from season 21 will be the only Colin Baker story yet to be released on the Blu-ray range. Not that I'm massively excited to watch the Twin Dilemma on Blu-ray, but there we go. But yeah, I think it's nice to be getting this box set, even if it's not the most, you know, great selection of stories at all times. It's still, you know, an interesting period of the show, as we've said, with you know, the various difficulties in production and behind the scenes. I'm hoping that, you know, the various features here can just again shed more light on just what it was like working on Doctor Who in the mid 1980s and some of the questionable decisions that were made around this time. I'm really interested to see what this box set is going to bring us from that regard. But Bill, have you got any final thoughts on the sort of feature list for the season 22 Blu-ray? If there anything that's particularly jumping out at you that you're looking forward to seeing?
I mean, I'd have to take another look at the features, but there's nothing else that we haven't already talked about that I can think of.
Yeah.
Like I say, I mean, I don't know, I could be wrong. Maybe it has got more new stuff on it than I remember, but I just remember because, like, with season 17, like I say, you had the Tom Baker interview, you had the interviews with Bob Baker, who sadly has passed away.
Yeah.
And you also had Lala Ward, I think, a kind of archive interview of her, I think it was. You had stuff like that, and also new making of documentary for Destiny of the Daleks. So it felt like a load of new or newish kind of content or features. And then to go to have a look at season 22, I mean, it's not to say it hasn't got anything. It's got still loads of stuff, which all sounds really interesting. But yeah, I mean, season 17, of course, was the first collection Blu-ray that I've actually sought out and got and everything. I've since got the season 26 standard edition.
Oh yeah. Very nice.
Haven't watched that through yet, but so I can't say if season 17 had less than previous ones, or if season 22 or if both that and season 22 have got kind of the normal amount. But yeah, I mean, to be fair, I can't think of what else they could really include on season 22, because I feel like I said at the beginning, I feel like a lot of stuff that they perhaps could have done, they've probably already done with season 23, because you know, that was the other Colin Baker season. So yeah, I still, don't get me wrong, I still find a lot of the special features really interesting, and I'm looking forward to when this is released. The cover art, as per usual, is great. Lee Binding's done another terrific job of it. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it, certainly, even if it's not a season that I necessarily would have chosen personally, for like right now. But yeah, I'm still looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think they've kind of, I know that season 20 has kind of been sitting on the shelf for the last 2 years. And they've, you know, I think that because we obviously haven't had a Peter Davison one since season 19 that was released at the end of 2018. So like that's the longest sort of gap we've had for a Doctor, obviously apart from Troughton and Hartnell that haven't had anything. But that looks like it's all down to the fact that Mark Strickson hasn't been able to come over from New Zealand in, you know, forever because of COVID to be able to actually do some interviews and features. So I feel like that's sort of one that's sitting on the shelf. They're ready to do it. They just need to do a little bit more with Mark Strickson and then they'll get that out there. So I feel like that probably would have come ahead of season 22 if they sort of were able to do it. And to an extent, it's almost looking at what have we got the right people in the right places to be able to film the features we want to at the moment, to be able to create the best box set. I mean, obviously we always sit here and go, when are they going to do black and white collection box sets? I hope at some point soon we might see one of those. But I'm sure it will happen. It's just a shame it hasn't happened until this point, and we'll have to keep waiting a little bit longer to find out for that. But Charlie, if you could pick it, what's the first story you're going to dive into on the season 22 Blu-ray?
I'm tempted to say Vengeance on Varos because it's supposed to be really good, and it's the only season 22 story I haven't seen yet. So that should be really interesting. I am tempted to watch Timelash again to desperately try and see if I could change my opinion.
Maybe the special effects will save it for you.
Maybe if it, I don't know. Yeah, well, obviously it probably won't. But if there's one story I'm not going to watch anytime soon, it's Two Doctors. Yeah.
I'll watch the making of documentary about it. I'll watch the location feature where they go there and look at it, but I'm not necessarily rushing to watch put myself through that 2.5 hours near enough of slow, painful, plodding, bad Centaurons story with just happens to have two doctors for some reason that they didn't really seem to be. Ryan, any final thoughts? Are you at least excited for the box set, even if not the stories themselves?
I'm quite excited about it. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to lie. This is probably down there with my bottom 5 worst seasons of Doctor Who ever. I think it's down there with the next season, the Trial of a Time Lord season 23, Series 11, Whittaker's first season, and even, I'm sorry to say, Series 13, Flux. I think it's down there with them as among the worst one. Maybe it is the worst one because I really love Revelation of Daleks. That was the very first Colin Baker story I ever watched, and got me tricked into thinking that the rest was going to be as good as that when it wasn't really for the most part. And I quite like Vengeance on Varos. Just a shame the others never really stood out to me, but I'm interested in the box set, mainly because of the new features and to see more insight into the stories, and of course the Matthew Sweet interviews. I think they're going to be really insightful, so I am hopeful for it. And also, I will say this, the fact that it's releasing on the 14th of March, I'm still a little bit sore the fact that if that is going to be the release date, it's a bit sore that the BBC decided to release one of my least favourite seasons of Doctor Who a day before my birthday.
Oh,
good job,
no.
BBC.
Happy birthday to you from the BBC, clearly.
Yeah, one of my least favourite seasons ever. Thanks. Thank you.
Dear. If it makes you feel any better, I believe Fear Her was broadcast on my birthday, so...
It's...
And I had Praxius on my birthday as well, so it wasn't really that much better.
Praxius was fine-ish.
Okay. Mate, we'll go with that.
So, yeah, it's... I'm just dreading that one day, if they do like a re-release of a modern Doctor Who set, I'm just dreading the day that they might do a collection re-release of Series 11 or the Flux season on my actual birthday, and I think that's just going to be an even sore point.
Yeah, I'm sure the BBC are planning it already. They're thinking, 20, 15 years, 20 years time, we're going to release that box set on the 15th of March just to spite Ryan. That is their plan, obviously. Absolutely.
Thanks. Thank you, BBC. You've done a good job.
Oh, absolutely. And well, on that note, that joyful note, we will come to an end for this edition of the podcast. It's a little quicker bonus podcast, which I hope you've all enjoyed, discussing season 22. We're going to be back in a week or two's time to discuss missing episodes in Doctor Who and how they've been covered in the various physical media as well since then, animations and the likes. But yeah, lots of interesting discussion about that. And, if there's any rumours of any other releases, then we'll be sure to bring it to you on the day that they announce it. So I hope you look forward to that then. But apart from that, from me, from Bill, from Ryan, from Charlie, I hope you enjoyed this edition of KerVAM, and we will see you again very soon. Goodbye.